What up? It's your boy, Incredible Man, and yes, I am back at it again. And this is New Amsterdam, Season 3, Episode 9 review. And, like, there were moments that I really loved this episode. And there were moments that, it kind of upset me a little bit. Let's get into it, man. To start off, the moments that I loved and enjoyed so much about this episode were Max going around fighting for justice yet again. That always shines and it always just shows such a wonderful side of Max, and it always something that just highlights each and every episode when Max is finding something to fight for. And I also enjoyed the Sharpe moments this episode, like with her niece and with her patients. I enjoyed the Reynolds aspect this week as well, dealing with that couple. And I enjoyed Iggy too. I enjoyed Iggy this week as well. And what I didn't like was the Bloom aspect. So let's just dive into it and get to it, man, because there's a lot of stuff. As for Max, we see that a lot of people are being rushed into the ER this week, and they all live in the same building, and they all have these particular symptoms because they've been hoodwinked and bamboozled by some snake oil that somebody sold this, was it Ronavax, for the coronavirus. So, or COVID-19, take your pick. Anyway, they started taking the stuff that like they got from flyers and stuff, and they bought it and everything, and they started taking it, and they all started to feel horrible and sick, and everybody had the same symptoms. Now, in this particular incident, all of these people in this building are in a, what did they call it, like a Wi-Fi dead zone in New York. And in this building, like, they don't have internet, they don't have computers or anything. Now, that's another aspect that I didn't really like this episode. I know everybody can't afford a smartphone, for one. I know that, smartphones are expensive and you can't, but they make some generally cheap smartphones. And for them not having Wi-Fi isn't a need. You know what I'm saying? It's a necessity. It's not something that you constantly need to live, to get by on. But with Wi-Fi, you could have obtained that information that, Ronavax is a scam, it's snake oil, that you don't really need it. But these people didn't have that connection. And that's what Max was fighting for this episode. That was weird. That's what Max was fighting for this episode, was to get these people internet, computers, and like a program so they would know what they're dealing with, to have access to like New Amsterdam and some of its doctors when they wanted to know more information about stuff. And they titled it Nathan. I think all of that aspect, that whole little situation with Max and helping these people, was a wonderful part about this episode, because it showed that, sure, I know a lot of the older people for sure would know how to access the internet, or like when pop-ups and stuff like that happened, they would be overwhelmed and taken back because of the stuff that's taking place on the internet and the computer, because they don't know how to operate all this stuff. So that's a shock and a surprise for them. So that's where Nathan comes in to help with the aspect of telling them, well, this is some snake oil, you shouldn't take this, and having access to doctors and all of that other stuff. That's a legit thing, and I feel like that was one of the highlights of this episode. But we also see that, it upset me because, like, I never knew this, but like, I guess, like for lower income housing and people that's living off of benefits, and or they make just enough to get by with ends meet and pay their utilities and stuff, they can't afford internet or a smartphone or a computer or anything like that. Now, that may be the case, but I will say this: I bought a computer, my very first computer, uh, for, I want to say, like $100, and that came with just the computer itself. It didn't come with a monitor. And I know that, a monitor, a keyboard, the cables, internet, the computer itself, which is the tower, like, all of that stuff adds up after a while. But I mean, you can set some aside and maybe possibly you can get to it later, but at that point you still don't have internet. Or you could just simply get a smartphone. But that's still a lot of money, man. But that's the part that I didn't know, and I felt informed about this episode, that a lot of people can't really afford all of this stuff. So Max went to some of the board members, and they got them free internet, free computers, and the free program to help them so they won't be bamboozled anymore. And I thought that was a very nice aspect, and that really was one of the very good highlights from this episode. Iggy, on the other hand, this week, we all know that Iggy is a fantastic psychologist. We know that Iggy cares about his patients, which you should, and his patients care about him. But we see that this week we get introduced again to Chase, the guy that lied about being in the military and that he burned his family down with a cigarette in the barn and that type of stuff. So we see that we get introduced to him again, and he's trying to live about his life because, he had to be held on a psych hold and everything. So now he's trying to reintegrate into society. He's got a place to live. He's got a job. And the next thing you know, we find out that the job fell through and he needed Iggy to co-sign for him to have another job, which happens to be at New Amsterdam in the cafe area, serving coffee and muffins and stuff like that. Now, it seems that now he's trying to be Iggy's friend when that's not the relationship that they need to have or have in general. Iggy's your psychiatrist and you're his patient, and Chance took that the wrong way, and we see that when Iggy tried to tell him that, he ended up drinking cleaning fluid, I think, and ended up in the hospital. And we all know that Iggy's a fantastic psychiatrist and he cares about his patients, but I feel like that tends to be the trend a lot, that Iggy's patients tend to not fall for him, but like want to be his friend more so than them just actually being his patients. They want to be his patients, but they also want to be his friend. And I don't think it's anything that has to do with Iggy, because I don't think he gives off that vibe. He just wants to really help them, but it just comes across that way in their eyes, and then they warp their whole relationship, and we end up in the situation that we're in, because it happened a couple times with a couple kids as well, him being there, and then they decided to make their relationship, oh, well, Dr. Iggy's a friend, or, Dr. Frome's a friend, and that's not. He's a psychiatrist. And we see that it hurt Iggy to pass Chase off. Chase? Is it Chase? Is it Chance? I want to say it's Chance. Anyway, pass off Chance to another psychiatrist, because we could tell that really hurt Iggy, but it's better for Chance in the long run because he's getting attached to Iggy. Now, I hope this doesn't come back into play, or he gets besides himself and decides to stalk Iggy or something like that, because I feel like that may be the direction they want to go. Now, one of the things that I hated about this episode was the whole Bloom situation. I feel like they're trying to double down on her and the chick having a relationship. I don't have a problem with it. I just don't like it because they never mentioned it before. It's coming out of the blue, and all of a sudden it's this random chick, and the next thing you know, like it just feels weird. It feels random to me. Like, I know a lot of things in the show that you're like, oh well, I get all excited and I mentioned that I love and stuff, but this just feels random. Just like last week with the whole aspect with Reynolds, like you guys mentioned, jumping from person to person ever since him and Evie broke up. Like, this feels random as well, like with Bloom and this chick. I mean, sure, they've been getting closer together and they're living in the same proximity, but it just seems random, because then at the end of this episode, she grabs Bloom's hand. It was like Bloom mentioned, she was surprised to see the huge plant in her house, or tree. It was like, well, I'm not really good with living things. And then they just grab hands all of a sudden, and then they kind of look at each other, and then they both start to look at the plant. It's like, are they forming a relationship here? This seems weird. It seems out of the blue and completely unnecessary, if you ask me. Now, I would love for her and Reynolds to get back together, because I feel like they're both matured and they both grown a little bit. So I think that they can definitely handle a relationship now. But even if they're not, and it's not about her, choosing to like this chick. It's just the fact that it's random. They never even mentioned this before. It's just out of the blue. But, I digress. Oh man, let's talk about Dr. Cole for a minute. This chick, now I will admit, she told Iggy that she didn't want to be in charge of selecting the new head of neurology. She told Iggy that on multiple occasions. She told him she didn't want to be chosen for that. Now, he had given it to her anyway. Then she started interviewing these people. Then the black doctor dude, he seemed crazy. This man talking about he make themes for every day of the week for the neurology department. Dude, I don't know what you're doing to my some Waikiki Wednesdays and Tahiti Tuesday. Nah, man, we need something else. Then we get the other chick, and she's interviewing her, and this chick is just rude. It's like, oh, I'm waiting for Dr. Cole. I'm Dr. Cole. Really? You're 12. You seriously gonna sit here and tell me she looks 12 to you? She does look young, but there's no way a 12-year-old is walking around the hospital like that. Come on, man, and talking about she's a doctor. Be honest. Just say that she's looking young. Don't say she looks 12. So, it is what it is. But Yeah, I wouldn't pick her either. She insulted me from the very beginning. I'm not here for that, man. Now, the third chick seemed like she had the qualifications. He was talking to her, and we see that Dr. Cole was actually fascinated with this chick, because I'm assuming she's might have been one of the people that actually wanted her to go into neurology. Like, and like reading her books and finding out about her and stuff is what enticed her to go into neurology. But she hired this chick on the spot, and immediately after she hired her and she introduced her to the neurology staff, next thing you know, this chick is talking about breaking down everything that VJ built and redoing everything from the ground up, and that he was completely, what did she say? Useless or something like that, along the lines about, like how he was so hands-on and attentive to the patients. You're like, we're gonna knock all that out the way. I bet Dr. Cole regret hiring this chick now, because you didn't vet her. You liked her, you read her books, you was infatuated with her because she was probably one of the people that you looked up to, and you hired her on the spot without actually interviewing her. And I bet you she regrets it now, though, because after listening to this chick just talk about VJ like that, yeah, I guarantee you she wished she would have actually interviewed her to find out what are her thoughts about the actual neurology department before she hired her on the spot. Guarantee you. We see Sharpe this episode too. Sharpe is still dealing with her niece, but she's also dealing with a case this week. And I think we all love how Sharpe handles her patients. Sharpe handles her patients like a pro, man. She's always there for her patients. And if she can go the extra mile to help them, she helps them. Now, granted, that's something she used to do, but then she started being like the face of New Amsterdam and the talk show doctor. Then that kind of fell by the wayside. But once Max kind of got incorporated and everything like that, that changed her. So now we know that she always goes that extra mile for her patients this episode in general. And we see that because the dude wanted to travel with his girlfriend, wife, or whatever she was. And she allowed them to travel, even though she knew that he needed the transfusion. So she called doctors along their routes to get him the transfusions while he's on his little mini vacation with his girlfriend or whatever. So I felt like that was nice, man. Huge shout out to Sharpe for that. Now, we also see that she's dealing with her niece this episode, and we find out a little bit more about why the niece is acting the way that she does. She feels like Sharpe doesn't really want her. She feels like she abandoned him and she never really got to know her brother. But we also learned that Sharpe felt abandoned first because her father left her and her mother in London and then went to, where are they from? Where's Mina from? Tehran? Are they from Tehran? Tehran or Dubai? I can't really remember, but she's from either or. Her father went there and then had an entire family and had another son, and then just forgot about Sharpe and her mother. So Sharpe felt abandoned first, and we see that actually weighs on her, and that's kind of how she never really connected with her brother. But I don't feel like she took Mina in out of pity. I felt like she wanted to be there for her family, and I felt like it was also because, sure, she felt like she abandoned her brother and she couldn't get there in time to be there for him or bury him or something. So I feel like she took Mina in as a familial obligation, but not out of pity. And they're kind of bumping heads like bad right now, so hopefully they'll start to integrate a little bit better between each other, because as of right now they're not communicating well. They don't agree with each other, and it's just a bad mess, man. But hopefully they can get together, because now both of them actually know a little bit more about why each of them feel the way that they feel. Now, the Reynolds aspect. Reynolds ends up dealing with this man and his daughter that came in because he lied and said that she got shot in a drive-by, when actually when Reynolds was doing the operation, he found out it was much closer because there was powder burns. So she got shot by the gun up close. And it comes to find out, we learned that, like, I thought the father would have shot her, but that's not the case. She found the gun and she shot herself, more than likely. But the father lied, and that's the whole part of this situation that made it bad, because the lie that he told, he said that he was either black or Latino. And then at the end of the episode, the mother comes out, we're not racist. And then her whole spiel talking to Reynolds about, I saw the Black Lives Matter movement and all of these rioters and protesters destroying buildings and stuff and businesses. And they were just so violent and we were scared for our life. That could be granted and that could be true. And I understand that. And I'm not even upset about them, being, the whole Black Lives Matter moment, them being terrified in that moment or whatever. I can get that because, you see the news and like, hey, you watch the wrong news station or the wrong news channel and not getting enough information yourself, you're gonna be like the other people. You're gonna be bamboozled. So them watching the wrong news or whatever, like, sure, stuff happens and anybody can be terrified. I get all of that. I'm not even upset about that because people are going to be people. I'm upset about the part about the husband coming in lying, saying that someone black or Latino shot his daughter when that's not even the case. Just admit that you had a loaded gun in the house, your daughter got to it, and she got shot. Why would you lie and say that someone of color shot your daughter when that's not the case? And then at the end of the episode, we're not racist. I mean, stupid is and stupid does. It was an accident. Just admit that it was an accident. Why lie and try to cover it up and say that someone black or colored shot your daughter when that wasn't the case? And Reynolds kind of laid into him, and I agree with everything he said. Because me, myself personally, I feel like the fact of him lying, saying that someone black or Latino shot his daughter when that wasn't the case, that's the whole part that upsets me the most. Sure, the lady talking about the Black Lives Matter stuff, I get it, but people are going to be who they are. It is what it is. But that moment when he made that split moment decision to come into that hospital and say that someone black or Latino shot his daughter, he thought of that on the way to the hospital. He didn't think of that the moment he got inside the hospital. That was already on his mind when he knew that his daughter was shot. But oh my gosh, man, that ended up being something else, man. But in the end, Reynolds saved his daughter anyway because he's a doctor. That's what he does. And then the people, we see that Reynolds called the police on the father because it became a crime when he decided to lie. Now, I don't understand because you could have just told the truth from the get-go, dude, and you wouldn't have been in any trouble. Well, maybe a little trouble because, you left a loaded weapon inside your house within your child's reach. But the lie is what made it, worse than what it was when you didn't have to lie. Oh my gosh, this video is longer than what I ever expected a video to be, man. But this your boy, Incredible, man. Don't forget to smash the like button so you can't smash any more. Comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them and subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. Peace out. I cannot complain because today, I'm doing my